Good morning on this Sunday, January 9th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Atlanta's 61st mayor, Andre Dickens, takes his oath of office, vowing to immediately start working on the problems plaguing Atlanta. Governor Brian Kemp announces one of his priorities for the upcoming session, the loosening of gun restrictions, and the president and vice president expected to be in Atlanta to push for federal voting legislation. Melita, Phil, and Martha are here, and we'd like to welcome our brand new panelist, Jason Carter, filling in for Theron. Welcome.
Thank you. I've got Theron's mug, and I'm sure everyone's going to be disappointed that I won't be as good as Theron, but I'm happy to be here.
We're glad to have you. We've all been tested this morning. Just want to let everybody know the debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Mayor Andre Dickens was sworn into office on the campus of his alma mater, Georgia Tech. He says his education will be put to use, solving some of Atlanta's most pressing problems.
Where elderly can feel empowered to come outside of their homes and can enjoy a walk in the park on a sunny day. As such, the first 100 days of my administration will be laser focused on reducing crime.
The Dickens administration will reshape City Hall as the new mayor works with several new city council members. No doubt the job of Atlanta's newest mayor will not be easy, as some in Buckhead are looking to break away.
I said we don't need separate cities. We must be one city with one bright future. We have survived hard times before.
Mayor Dickens says the one thing Atlantans want most, action. He promised to hit the ground running. Phil, I want to start with you this week. After the past couple of years, I think everybody wants to see Mayor Dickens succeed.
Well, yes, you always want to give a new person a chance, and as you know, I've given him 100 days to see if he can turn around the rising crime and the public safety issue. He's said, to his credit, that that's his #1 mission and priority, but he needs to get rid immediately of the weak police chief. He needs to announce that he's for due process for all police officers that are involved in shooting cases, rightly or wrongly. He needs to resume chases of criminals. Why have this stupid policy of calling the state troopers if you're an Atlanta cop? And also, let's renew the anti-crime unit. There's many things he could do. I think we're waiting for that. He's made some good moves. I like some of the people on his transition team.
Well, Melita, it's one thing to say all of these things on the campaign trail, but it's another thing to put them into action.
I agree, and I believe he set off on a good foot, because even before he was sworn in, he joined Congresswoman Nikema Williams, State Representative Betsy Holland, and City Council President Doug Shipman with a hands-on work day at a city park. So he's setting the stage for being a hands-on mayor. He's met with policemen in their zone meetings, and he's showing enthusiasm for getting the job done, and he takes office with a younger, more vibrant, more diverse city council. So I think we're off to a good start.
Well, Martha, Mayor Dickens says his first priority obviously is the crime problem. He says he wants to hire hundreds of new officers, but where else does he need to go here?
Well, he's meeting with the state legislature. He's already having those meetings. A more public one was with Lieutenant Governor Duncan, but he's meeting with other members, as I understand. And, you know, the safety issue is issue #1. But then it's going to be the job training. I was very interested in hearing that, because there's lots of businesses in Atlanta that have help wanted signs, and there are lots of opportunities for people in Atlanta. So if he can get safety and jobs on the right track, he's in a good place.
Jason, you live within the city limits. What do you think about the challenges ahead?
Look, I think it's great. I mean, I think that you guys are all going to be excited about Andre Dickens. I've known him for a long time. He is a dynamic, he's an energetic guy, and he's coming in with a city council that's unlike any almost we've ever seen, because, you know, you see not just does Andre Dickens know we need change, but every single person on the city council came in, 4 incumbents lost. You had, new blood. Doug Shipman's never been elected to anything before, but he's a doer. He's somebody that's going to come in there and really get some work done. So you've got a lot of fresh blood, a lot of energy behind it. And I think he's the kind of guy that can, to Martha's point and to Phil's point, can get into the type of things that needs to be gotten into with people who can solve problems. I think he's going to be great.
Well, hopefully on the state and federal level, you'll see a lot of these older people getting beaten. So we'll see that too.
Well, let's talk about a veteran, right? Mary Norwood, who is now back on city council, has introduced legislation for a Buckhead task force. Martha, we spent a lot of time talking about the crime issue. Is there a need for another task force? Because you heard Mayor Dickens say this is all about action.
I think it's about action, but I think the folks in Buckhead want to see some focus on their issues so that they don't end up with having a vote on this Buckhead city. I think that, you know, Phil and I disagree about where that's ultimately going to go, but I think that ultimately, I think Andre Dickens is going to get a pass on this, and that the Buckhead City vote won't happen this year.
Well, Melita, you know, I've been thinking about this. Midtown Atlanta has its own Midtown Blue, a public safety force of its own. Why is there not talk about a Buckhead Blue?
Well, I think what we do is we wait and see what this task force comes up with. And this is a way for Mary Norwood to feel relevant again by having her own little fiefdom of a Buckhead task force.
Well, on the Buckhead City front, let's talk about this. It was not a good week for its leader, Bill White, who had to delete a tweet he posted this week saying that he regretted amplifying the nasty comment. Jason, the post was from a blog associated with white nationalists. Want to get your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, you know, I think one of the things that we always say is when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Right? I mean, I've never accidentally tweeted white supremacist content. I've never had it come up on my Twitter feed and had it resonate with me enough to think, oh, someone else needs to see this. And so I think it's a big problem. I think it probably kills the Buckhead movement, city movement right now. I think it's a big major issue. I think people don't want to be associated with that, not the people in the Buckhead I know.
Phil, critics do say that this is just more proof that this movement is rooted in racism.
Well, I think it's PR 101 when you have the opponents of a new city smearing the top leader of it, that Bill White is the CEO, of course. Well, let me finish. Hold
on, let him finish and then you can go.
Because, you know, the man said, I didn't know about the website, I apologize, and move on. I think that has nothing to do with the merits and the pros and cons of having a new city. I've always been in favor of the legislature allowing some affected area to vote yes or no. I think that it's a distraction. I think it's an overreaction to somebody retweeting or liking something on Facebook. I think that's silly. I think you have to go with the merits. There's a lot of Democrats and independents that are for Buckhead cityhood. So let the legislature do its thing. Let the debates begin, whether it's on bonds or schools or crime. And then I think the Republicans have been very sympathetic to new cities. I think almost a dozen have been approved, except for one over the last, since Sandy Springs got it in 2005. So let the legislature do its thing and see if there's going to be a vote.
But we need to point out this one's different because we're talking about those other cities were unincorporated areas of counties, and this is a break off from a current city. Melita, your thoughts? I know you wanted to respond.
Well, Bill White is violating the #1 rule of any political PR. If you're putting yourself out there in front of a movement, you should be more careful about how and what you put out as the face of that movement. And that was a big error on his part. I disagree with Phil. I don't believe that this de-annexation movement should be put to a vote because it makes the entire state of Georgia look unstable. You've already got, whether it's satire or real, you've already got a movement popping up in Athens. And the state of Georgia can't appear in the national eye to be so unstable that cities can start de-annexing from within their own territory.
Martha, is your feeling still that this is going to be stalled at the legislature, that it's not going to get through this session?
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's never going to happen. I just think this session they're going to give Andre Dickens the 100 days, and they're going to see what he's going to do. This can always come back and fight another day, and who knows what everything's going to look like in a year.
Jason, final thoughts?
Well, I think Martha's right. I think that at the end of the day, what you're looking at is, do we want to continue to take a metro area that works in the way that it works and splinter it even more? I mean, we really have spent a lot of time trying to get one of the biggest cities in the country together, and the more times we split things up, the worse it gets for everybody.
So you don't care if people are worried about crime and they don't have any option to get away from crime?
That's the biggest false choice ever. Of course we want that. All of us are sitting there supporting new people, new leadership. I think it's great that Mary Norwood, within the city of Atlanta, is going to tackle Buckhead crime. I think that's the best way to do it.
It took Sandy Springs 30 years to become a city because they were oppressed by Fulton County. I think people have the right to break away.
That's my point. Is it took Sandy Springs 30 years. My point is
I wish
they
it
could live
get
to
quicker.
fight another day.
Well,
That's all.
I think a lot of people would be happy to be oppressed the way Buckhead is oppressed.
All right, we will leave it there.
I hope you don't get mugged.
Welcome, Jason. All right, well, coming up, as legislators head to the Gold Dome tomorrow for the start of the 2022 session, Governor Kemp outlines one of his priorities, expanding gun rights. We'll discuss.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
This week, Governor Brian Kemp held a news conference to talk about a priority for him in the upcoming legislative session. Melita, I don't think many folks were very surprised that he's putting gun rights as one of his top priorities.
No, not after that campaign commercial from 4 years ago, which got him so much national play. But it's almost schizophrenic to, from one side of your mouth, talk about how concerned you are about crime, and then from the other side of the mouth say, oh, but let's just take away the only way police can currently take guns away from potential criminals and loosen the restrictions on guns so that we have guns everywhere. And so it's a really, it doesn't play well.
Martha, I'll let you respond to that, but I wanted to ask you also, we saw former Senator Perdue come out right away criticizing Governor Kemp, saying, oh, well, it's about time, that the governor got on board with this idea. We're going to see a lot of this back and forth, and throw Vernon Jones into the mix as well in this Republican primary.
Well, I mean, but in fairness, it was a promise that Governor Kemp made at the beginning, in his last election, and this is one of the areas where people that voted for him have been criticizing him because they've been ticking off the promises. So, that's one of those things. But I will say that, licensed gun owners are not usually the problem. We have guns everywhere already, Melita, and it's not usually the people that are licensed gun owners that are the problems. In fact, almost never does that happen. So, I think this is part of a campaign promise, and I think you're going to see my former boss, Senator Perdue, commenting on all of those things and also taking the lead on a number of things. This is going to be a spirited primary, and, I'm very encouraged to hear from a number of people that they really think that once the primary's over, that people are going to get behind whoever the nominees are, and that's been something I've been worried about.
Jason, as a former state senator, you have fought these issues down at the state capitol on expanding gun rights. If the Republicans are pushing for constitutional carry, there are a lot of stolen guns out there that people are just not putting them in safe storage. Is this an issue where Democrats can say, okay, fine, you want to fight constitutional carry, let's talk about the safe storage of guns? Yeah,
I mean, the bottom line is safe storage of guns and a variety of other things. I mean, my record on gun rights is what it is, but I think our discussion about it is broken because we're only ever having two-sided discussion without the middle at all. And what the bottom line is, what is Governor Kemp's plan, or what is the Republican Party's plan for keeping guns out of the hands of killers? What is the plan? And you can come in and you can say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to expand all these gun rights, but then what? I mean, that's the only discussion we have. We have to talk about how to keep them out of the hands of killers and murderers.
Phil, I think he does have a point. Well, covering this down the legislature, we talk about the left and the right, but there is a lot of room in the middle.
Well, I don't think anybody disagrees with that. I think we're having the discussion now between the left, right, and the middle. That's what there's several bills that are floating out right now in the General Assembly. I haven't read all of them. I've read one of them by Senator Jason Aventarte. But I think the bottom line, and I think all too many liberals forget that this is a basic constitutional right to keep and bear arms. And we talked about crime in our first segment. I'd like to take all of you to a firing range. There's people of all ethnicities and genders. They're practicing because they're fearful of the gang crisis we have in the state. And so I will say this, I think that we need to sit down and read some of the bills that are going to be coming out. I'm for constitutional carry, but I'm not just going to willy-nilly endorse that concept. I want to make sure that people with mental health issues are exempted, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I think the debate is going to be there. That's what we have
Jason?
a General Assembly for.
Well, yeah, and I've been in the General Assembly, and I've been down there when we talked about gun laws, and I have yet to see a single Republican ever in the history of at least my time in Georgia politics say, here's a way that we can stop these weapons from getting into the hands of killers.
I disagree with that.
Well, let's read the bills, and we'll come back and see what they look like.
All right, well, let's talk about, I want to go back to the David Perdue campaign, because this week he filed a lawsuit challenging a law that was passed last year. Not a lot of folks knew about this law. So, Phil, I want to get your take on this. If you could explain what it is in the lawsuit.
Well, exactly. It's a new campaign finance law that, you're right, was very underreported in the media. And just to do some quick highlights here, some critics are calling it an incumbent protection bill. What it does, it allows you as a incumbent to bring in money from these PACs and other outside groups so you can double, triple, quadruple. It affects both Democrats and Republicans. And there's one thing I really don't like about this law. law, and I would hope all of us on the panel would agree. You, during a session now, if you're a lobbyist, can walk up to a Senator Jason Carter and say, by the way, Senator, I'm hoping you're going to vote for SB 5245, and here's a fat check for you, by the way.
Yeah.
I do not like the fact that you can now just give a check to a lawmaker during a legislative session. I think that's asking for trouble. Somebody's going to get in trouble.
Melita.
Provided that lawmaker has a super PAC, and not all of them do.
Well, Jason, but a lot of Democrats said we
Sounds
don't like
you're
this.
agreeing with Phil, Melita.
Yes.
I'm not agreeing with Phil necessarily.
But let me ask you this, Jason, because a lot of Democrats said, oh, we don't like this law. We wanted to vote against it, but we'd be stupid not to use it now that it is law.
Well, look, I mean, the bottom line is, and I agree with Phil and David Perdue on this, because the fact of the matter is what you've got as a bill that says certain lawmakers, the incumbent governor is allowed to raise money during the session, there's allowed to coordinate with the campaign and essentially have no more campaign finance rules. That's just for the incumbent governor. It doesn't make any sense from a freedom of speech standpoint. You can't say this person's speech is more valuable and less regulated than that person's. And so that's why I think it's unconstitutional. That's why I think it's going to get struck down. But at the end of the day, if it's out there, then both sides have to play by those rules. It's just that that rule is crazy because it says that this person's speech, if you're the sitting governor, for example, is worth more than somebody else's. And that's not what our Constitution says.
Martha, if this is struck down, will it be in time for this election?
I think so. I think they'll get some kind of fast tracking if it's going to be struck down.
All right. Well, there's so much more to get to in this block in COVID, but you know, we all know what's going on with COVID, so I guess there's not much to discuss on COVID. But coming up, the president and vice president expected in Atlanta this week to discuss voting rights legislation, a discussion from both sides of the debate coming up.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
President Biden and Vice President Harris are expected to be in Atlanta this week, making a push for federal voting rights legislation. Jason, I want to start this block with you because I want to ask you, there's a lot of pushback from even some in your own party that say, look, we fought this fight here. We're for it. So why are they coming to Georgia? You know,
I think that there are people who are frustrated that we haven't had action at the federal level or that we haven't been able to have success at the federal level. Of course, there's been a lot of action. And I think this is one of those issues that, you know, people feel really strongly about. You know, I think we do need to make sure we protect the right to vote. And I think we do need to be sure that we're doing it in a way that doesn't, you know, needlessly attack the system. And so, you know, it's an important moment. I think it's a high profile issue. I know, you know, Phil has views on it that I can hear him chuckling about in my ear here. But I think that they're going to come. I think it's going to be successful. This is the capital and the home, really, of voting rights in many, many ways. And I think we need to continue to be that. And they're looking for some Atlanta juice for that.
Martha's chuckling, too.
I'm chuckling, and I love this because everybody on your side is sitting back and watching us fight about our primary.
Yeah.
I'm loving sitting back and watching y'all fight the progressive wing of your party that wants everything they want, no exceptions, no compromise, or else we're going to go home. And this is the thing I'm going to sit back and watch, because this is where you guys have a dangerous waters, because the progressive side of the party, which is the minority, it's like 22% of the Democratic Party, they are very vocal. And they're saying, if we don't get our way, don't come.
Melita, let me ask you, because I like to play devil's advocate so I can get y'all going here. Here in Georgia, which is the epicenter of the voting rights battle, we've had record number of voters, including minority voters. So in your opinion, why is the legislation needed?
Well, the legislation is needed because it's needed to correct some of the wrongs being enacted in many states that would suppress votes. But I'm surprised that the White House planned this without working with their allies. And I'm also surprised that the White House would come to Georgia on the day after a national championship football game when nobody's going to be paying attention to them in the slightest.
Obviously, nobody consulted.
We win.
Either way,
I was chuckling about that,
win, lose, or draw, nobody is going to care that they are in town.
And that is disappointing, because every time Biden and Kamala Harris show up, there is always a gaffe or some stupid statement that they make, and I want people to be exposed to that. This is not about voting rights. This is about federalizing elections elections, dynamiting all 50 states having the right to conduct their own elections, command and control, again by the left. They want to wipe out voter ID. I told you that, and you didn't read the legislation. That is outrageous. And so there's no voter suppression. You know that in your heart, Jason. You can go to court tomorrow if you feel there's discrimination at the polls.
And the bottom line is there's no voter fraud, and you can go to court and try to prove it if you think that. And these guys are going to freak out when I say that.
No.
But we have great leadership in the Democratic Party on these issues between Raphael Warnock and Stacey Abrams, and I think they're going to be able to keep folks together, keep them focused on the things that actually matter.
But the federal law is not going to pass. I can just tell you that right now.
I'm going to move on. This week, the Cobb County GOP canceled a prayer vigil it had planned to honor what it called the January 6th Patriots. Martha, the group said that the event was mischaracterized. Your thoughts?
It wasn't mischaracterized. It was a stupid idea from the beginning. And while I am a lifelong Republican who supports candidates for the party, to take that tact and not understand what they were getting into was a huge mistake.
Melita?
I couldn't agree with her more that it was a stupid idea. I mean, what were they thinking to plan such a rally? And when Terry Anulowitz, the state rep from Smyrna, called it gave it a name that resonated with national media, they suddenly were embarrassed enough to pull the event.
Phil?
Well, I would say that the Bible says know your enemy. I would have told the Cobb GOP that you know exactly what the left-wing mainstream media is going to do if you float this idea about some sort of prayer meeting on that day. I think that basically they should have had a prayer meeting for all of the people and property that were lost during the summer of 2020 in all these permissive Democrat cities where a lot of these people to this day got away with all this destruction.
Jason?
I think the biggest difference between the January 6th event and the extent to which folks want to criticize property destruction or other things that occurred during the mostly peaceful protests during 2020 is that the Democratic Party hasn't embraced any of that violence. The Democratic Party as a party, you don't need to say we want to destroy property and storm the Capitol in order to get elected. You don't see.
They haven't condemned it either, though.
Yeah, they need to condemn
No,
it.
they did not. No, they did not.
100%. Joe Biden, 100%.
It's a wink and a nod by the left.
Those summer protests were on the streets. They were not assaulting the United States Capitol building in the midst of action called for in the Constitution. They were not breaching the very capital of our democracy.
They assaulted federal buildings in Seattle, right here in downtown Atlanta. Did you miss that?
Look,
this should be equally condemned. Everyone's against violence and rioting. It all should be equally condemned. Just play by the rules.
Martha?
Look, bottom line is what happened on January 6th proved that the Constitution works. The Constitution is a contract. You don't need a contract when things are going well. You need a contract when things are going poorly. Things happened on time. We certified the election. We swore in Joe Biden. I do not defend what happened, but there were also 20 or 30,000 people that peacefully protested on that day, and a small group broke off and did this damage. And we need to know all the answers. For me, though, to be very clear, once they broke through the stanchions and disobeyed police and destroyed property, they lost me, okay, on that. But peaceful protest we have to stand up for. Even in the case of Democrats, where I might not like what they're protesting against, I stand up against peaceful protest and freedom of speech. When it crosses the line to damage, I'm going to condemn it.
All right, the matriarch speaks.
I'm sorry.
Well said, Martha.
All right, thank you. Coming up, we'll have winners and losers, everyone. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
My winner this week, former State Representative Bill Hembry, who has been very public about his battle with cancer. He will undergo surgery at MD Anderson in Houston this week. Our thoughts and prayers are with you, Bill. We know you've got this. Jason, I will start with you since you're guest handling.
My first winners and losers.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for letting me be on here. I really enjoyed it. I think my biggest winner this week, I hope, is going to be Georgia football. I know everybody was going to say that, but I'm going to pick Nakobe Dean, and I'm going to pick Nakobe Dean, who's a linebacker. Who's one of the greatest in the country, but who also has a 4.0 and a mechanical engineering degree.
Wow.
And that is a remarkable achievement, probably better than all of us did in college. I think the other winner that I would note is, and I know some of these folks are probably going to mention Senator Isaacson, but what I want to mention specifically is the Isaacson Initiative, which is his program that they began to tackle Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and other cognitive disorders. It's a great program. It's something that folks can get involved in. It's something that I've been involved in the past. I'm not good at losers, but I'm going to say that my losers are going to be Tuesday morning meetings because I don't think anybody's going to be there after that football game.
All right, Martha, your turn.
Yeah, I want people to watch White County and other small communities that are going to be challenging their census results, just something to kind of file in the back there. And my winner is Speaker Ralston for his initiatives that he's putting forth for this legislative session. And also my loser is the trolls that were criticizing the Isaacson funeral for being on January 6th. I can tell you Diana Isaacson is not political. She did it because it was convenient for her family. And that's what we should have had on January 6th. Absolutely. Because that is the example of how people get along.
A true statesman. All right, Melita?
Well, I think speaking of the funeral, Johnny Isaacson's daughter won hearts with her beautiful eulogy, which set forth the kind of thing all parents want their children to say about them later. And then another winner for me was President Carter's great New York Times op-ed. And then I'm hoping that my friend will be correct. Tony Earnhardt says that Georgia will win 24-21 with a field goal at the end of the game.
All right, Phil, you see the clock, 18 seconds.
Just very briefly, I hope George is the winner. Dan Reeves, we lost him at age 77, Rome native.
Great guy.
The Falcons coach. And David Ralston, Martha, I have to make him a winner too. He opened the door for perhaps some gaming legislation this session.
All right, well, that closes our door. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.